Welcome to First in the Family, where we explore the world of breaking generational patterns due to access, education, will, or sheer bravery. We celebrate the ways that these accomplishments bring about joy. We honor the way that these changes can lead to discomfort and pain, and we grieve the sacrifices that all of it requires. My name is Cecy, and I'm your host. Thank you for joining us. Let's see who's first. So, Mekka, not only are you the principal engineer in the office of the chief technology officer at NetApp, very impressive, but you also are the first in your family to own a home, to pursue this career, which I'm sure some folks in your family are like, huh? What do you do? Because my husband's a software engineer and nobody actually knows what he does. They also think he's the tech guy. I love when you wrote that in your survey. You're like, I'm just IT. Because my husband gets all kind of calls from the family, and he's like, I don't know. I don't know how to fix your printer. I know how to code to make your printer do stuff, but I don't know how to fix your printer. So I appreciate that. And then you also wrote, this is my first weird question. You also wrote in your first that you didn't own a car growing up. And I think you were going to finish and maybe didn't. So I want to hear the rest of that. So are you the first in the family to own a car as well?
Well, no. Oh gosh, I did mean to continue that thought. See, this is what happened.
I love it.
So we didn't drive. I grew up in New York City, same as you. And I was born out in Coney Island. Well, I was born in Brookdale, but we lived in Coney Island for some years. We moved to South Jamaica. I think we even lived out over on St. Mark's for a few years. And in New York City, you don't need to drive. Driving is actually a burden. Yep. My grandparents drove, but in my immediate family, we didn't drive. And actually, I didn't know very many people that did drive or even had cars. So, getting a driver's license is very different when you grow up in New York City. Mm-hmm. If your parents don't drive, and my mom didn't even have a driver's license at all, ever. So I knew my dad knew how to drive because I remember being in the car that he had driven a few times. Mm-hmm. But my parents divorced when I was very young. So I had no real impetus to drive.
Yeah.
And then I went to Brooklyn Tech, computer science, and then Georgia Tech, computer science. So I left New York City. And if I came to the Southeast, and if you spent any time outside of New York City, everywhere else in the country, you have to drive unless you are in some other major metropolitan area.
They're like driving at 12 years old.
Yeah. Out here in North Carolina, the kids drive tractors at like 10. So,
yep.
But you just don't need to. And so this is somewhat environment, somewhat family. So oh gosh, God bless my sorority sisters. I'm an AKA. I
Nice.
pledged Nu Beta chapter. And I had a wonderful sorority sister who let me practice on her car. I had friends that let me practice. So I didn't get my driver's license until I was maybe 22. And it was out of pure necessity, right? Like I got a co-op job, public transportation. I was in Atlanta. Public transportation is just, it's not the way.
Right.
I don't care what, don't let anyone talk you into that. And so, but what was even more interesting was that I got my license. Okay, now I'm a driver. I had to go through the process of buying a car without having, any reference. I mean, my grandparents actually bought me a beater at an auction that I drove for a few years. But then it came time to buy a new car, and I made some mistakes. I made some mistakes. And then I moved, I started my life. I'm driving. Then my mother moves from New York City down to North Carolina after my son was born to be closer to her, she had other grandkids, but my sister's on the West Coast. So this was, logically where she was in life. And then I taught her how to drive. And she got her driver's license at 50.
Oh, that's so
beautiful. Give her a lot of credit because I'm nearing 50 and I know how hard it is to learn new things as you get older. Yeah. And I remember her being, pretty solid in her decision not to drive. Like it was intentional,
Right.
but now she's made this move and she has to. And so, yeah, I would go pick her up from work and I would let her drive home and, kind of give her, and, this role reversal stuff. I don't know if y'all, if you have experienced this yet, it's different. Like when you become a teacher to your parent.
Right. We're about to enter that chapter, I think, because my in-laws just moved down here literally on Friday.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
okay.
So, I feel like we're about to encounter all the things. They're living in a 55 plus community. My mother-in-law does not drive as well. So I'm like, maybe I have a new a bonding activity.
This is another podcast, I'm telling you. This is a whole nother podcast.
Oh my gosh. It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah. So we had that experience and so this was something I didn't even think about until you asked this question. I was like, we didn't have a car. And then now car is a permanent part of life.
Yeah.
So I had to learn all that stuff, right? Like learn how to negotiate with the dealer. And is a lease a good idea for me? No, it's not. Okay, I did that first and had to discover that. And, what about my credit score? Like, how do I know, is there a way for me to understand my credit score? And a lot of these things came about in our lifetime too, right? So our parents didn't have, a way to check their FICO and they didn't think about it, but you better before you try to borrow money. And so there's some of these things that we naturally learn along with the older members of our family, just because they're evolving and because of technology. But then something like driving, we didn't do it. Yeah.
That's the thing that I find most interesting about being the first, right? Is that all of those little things, like I was saying before, come along with that step to be the first, right? It sounds like one complete thought, like I was the first in the family to buy a car and get my license. But what does that actually mean? That means research. That means probably making some bad deals, right? Like there's no frame of reference. And I think oftentimes people take for granted having your dad with you, having your uncle who's done it 50 times, all the cars you saw growing up, all the houses, all the things you saw getting fixed. Like it's just second nature.
Yeah.
But when that was foreign and that was completely absent from the narrative, you literally are creating this as you go along.
And you're creating a legacy of it too, right? I think until my son he'll be 23 on Sunday.
Oh, yay! Happy birthday!
I know. But as he's getting older, I realize when you're the first, or you create these processes because there was no precedent, you're also creating a legacy of it, right? Like you're passing it on. So everything that I've learned through that process of creating it, this is the way my son will know to do it. And this is the way he will teach his kids, right? He'll influence it with his own, he'll tweak it, and then he'll pass it on. And so it is, I think a lot about legacy all the time. And I think once upon a time I thought, oh, my work is my legacy, but my family is my legacy, right? Like they will carry on those really important parts of me that I want people to know, that I want to be remembered by. And so I do think about those things. So I find myself now that he's a young adult talking to him about these things that we teach them without intentionally teaching them, because they're things we learned by doing. And so I talk about it and I try to, you look back, especially when you're the first, you may have done things differently or wrong, and you learned the wrong way to do it by doing. And you have to explain that, right? Like I did this, but don't do this.
Oh yeah.
This is how I did it. But please don't do it.
100%. It's funny. My kids are just 8 and 6, and I already have these conversations with them all the time. And I tell them, I apologize all the time. Like, listen, mommy did not, I grew up without parents. Like mommy didn't have anybody to tell her how to navigate big emotions. And so as I'm teaching you how to navigate big emotions, mommy's also learning how to navigate big emotions. So let's make mistakes together. I will apologize when I didn't get it right. I want you to be able to also own when you don't get it right. And let's help each other out. It's such a crucial part of the legacy building. I hadn't actually thought about it that way, but it's 100% true. These firsts lead to the seconds,
Yes.
right? And
Yep.
thirds and fourths.
That's
So
a huge deal too, because your kids are young, right? And that this is before kids really accept their parents as human beings, right? You're superheroes to your kids.
Right.
And so, it is better for them to see us as people, because it kind of drops off a cliff for them when they see it later in life. And they're like, you make mistakes. How dare you? And so it's very good to establish that with them young and let them see your humanity young. And I think that helps them to see humanity in others and not be so hard on people as they grow. So it's the grace that they're learning to extend you, they will learn to extend others. So it's a beautiful thing.
Amen. I receive that and pray that that's actually the case, because mommy don't know what she's doing. Mommy's winging it half the time. So, Mekka, you are the first in your family to pursue this career, which I mentioned my husband's an engineer, is a pretty male-dominated white space. So not only are you the first in your family, I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, you're probably the first in the room, maybe to step into it, or the company, or whatever it is. Tell me about that road, navigating, not even having the frame of reference, but also being a Black woman in all of these spaces.
Oh, yeah. It's, I think I probably worked a quarter, a third of my career before I realized that this is an actual thing, right? So first in my family to pursue software, right? Like STEM it's been around since before there was an actual label, but engineering, math, technology, more science, more traditional roles like doctors and engineers. Sure, we have those folks in my extended family, but computer science as a discipline, I kind of grew up with it to some degree as it becoming a lucrative career path for more people, right? So again, depending on when you grow up and what you choose, the time that you grow up in somewhat can determine what career path you choose. I think I had that sweet spot. I graduated from junior high school in like the late 80s. And if you know anything about the emergence of big tech, y'all go back and watch movies and read. These kinds of things don't come around very many times in our lives. And so, my son was just asking me about, hey, when did Amazon get big? And I was like, the late 90s, I was coming out of college. Like it put me on this trajectory to really allow me to learn at a key point when computer science and software development was emerging. So again, right, not very many people in my family would have chosen a career in this way. But again, I had no one to talk to about what this might be like. So there was this huge unknown. And I was always good at science and math. I just had a natural affinity for it. I did well in it. And so it kind of led me down this path to being intrigued by computers in general. And by programming. And so,
Did your family, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Did your family get that? Or was that like strange? Was it like, what are you doing with this new tech stuff? Like, here are the more practical routes. Or were they like, yeah, rock on, go pursue the new weird stuff?
Yeah.
Got it.
So like my grandmother latched on to my reading ability when I was very young, right? And she would have me read to her friends in front of her friends. It was really my grandma stunting on her.
Look at what my baby can do. Look at my baby.
Exactly. But it wasn't, and they all knew I was good at math, right? Like that was the thing they latched on to. She's really good at math. But no, I think it was so far off their radar that I said it and it like bounced off their heads and hit the floor. Like, oh, she likes that. That's cool. So
that's cute.
Yeah. And then, the grades are good, right? Because in your family, that's cash. That's you get money for having a good
Right.
report card. But no, there was no like, I do remember my dad, he was in accounting. I believe he was a CPA at some point. He programmed in Fortran. So he had that conversation with me like later on. But this was like after I had already chosen computer science. But it was really like I know a little bit of what you're talking about, but not really, because he didn't do it for a living. So, so yeah, I went this path. I did have one really good friend in high school who also majored in computer science with me.
Oh,
another
nice.
Black girl. She's my buddy. She went to Spelman. I went to Georgia Tech. We both majored in computer science. So I had her. It really did bond us. But no, you're right. This parallel between my family kind of, I felt like a loner going into this field, pursuing this course of study. And it becomes interesting in how you talk about your experiences with your family. Like I had to figure out how to filter it to try to be somewhat relatable. And so now I'm not sharing they can't get the gist of the full experience. And there's a whole lot more than just my studies that's new here. I went 800 miles. I think that's roughly right, to Atlanta. I'm in a new city. I don't know anybody. I'm in a dorm. I had no idea what that would be like. Yes. I'm with strangers. I'm having to make new friends. I'm in the South and I am a city girl.
Girl.
And I'm like, this is terrible. Is this what life is like outside of New York City?
It's a whole nother planet down here.
Oh my God. I thought everything was so corny. Like, New York City kids, we think we live in a bubble and we think everything else is corny. So yeah, there was that culture shock experience. There was all these things, and it does feel kind of lonely. And I never felt lonely at the time. I just completely turned inward and like just worked through that. Like, here are my goals. Here's what I'm going to go do. Who cares if people know or if I'm telling my story? The end goal, the next thing, the goal is the point.
So was that like a coping mechanism? Was it like, I don't want to deal with the external kind of emotion and shock and culture, so let me put down my head and kind of barrel through?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think also I had already developed that coping, because along with growing up in the city, all those other things, it was a dangerous time, right? We saw a lot of bad things happen. I'm a child of divorce, and that happened very young. And so I think I developed these mechanisms, not even on purpose, early. Yep. And so it was my go-to, right? Like, okay, shut those emotions off. Don't worry about that, because all that's going to do is stop me. And I
slow
need
you
to
down.
keep going.
Yes. As a fellow overachiever, I can relate. No, it's interesting because it from a psychological perspective, it makes sense, right? Your brain's trying to protect itself. And when you have this sort of path in front of you where you're getting instant rewards, right? Like you're getting good grades, you're graduating, going to school you want to go to, you're getting opportunities. It becomes this protective shell of just achievement. But of course, as my therapists have told me over the last 20 years, there's a lot of impacts as well. And that can take a toll. So was there a moment where you felt the toll of kind of hitting it? Tell us about that.
Yeah, for sure. So, so along with it got worse as I moved into my professional career, because now not only do I not have my family to talk to, I look around, there's hardly any women, hardly any Black people, definitely no Black women. I could count on one hand the number of Black women that I ever worked with in my field, ever. And I've been in my career for 25 plus years now. So, the shell, my armor was thick and tough, and it started to become unrecognizable to me, even like it just looked like me. And so it became, so when I became a mom, I softened. I don't want to be general. I softened a ton when I became a mom. And I feel like I'm like the Grinch, right? My heart grew like 3 times when I had, when I was pregnant. Like I remember the moment and I felt like, oh, there's my purpose, right? Like this is the important stuff.
Yes.
And I just became more kind. I started working with young kids. Like I stalked my kid, like everything he was in. Oh, I got to be a leader. Oh, you're doing Awana. I want to be an Awana. Oh, you're doing Taekwondo. I want to be a Taekwondo teacher, like everything. Oh, you watch anime. Oh, I love anime now. Now I know all of it. So it really like made me pour into another person, which again helped me learn how to pour into other people. So I found this in me. But then something else happened when I started to get more senior in my career and be in more leadership roles. I realized that I had this big, tough shell, and I wasn't allowing myself to seem vulnerable at all. And I think there is something about leaders who allow themselves to be vulnerable in front of other people, in front of people that they're leading, that makes them communicate better and opens the door for people to come and share difficulties, challenges that they're having in order to relate better. Again, about showing your humanity. We, again, being Black and woman, female, you try so hard to seem like you're never struggling with anything because, and this is a fact, you will be penalized worse for any struggles or challenges. And so you build up this shield to keep that from happening. And then later on, you realize, how can I be a successful leader if I'm kind of this robot behind this armor? I need to be a person. And so I felt like it was limiting my ability to lead effectively and to mentor and to share my experiences. Teams grow better together when they learn together. Yes. And if I'm walking around like I know everything and I don't make mistakes, people will not share their own learnings with me. So it was these things. It was the humanity of it, and me learning more that being stepping into my humanity, stepping into it was like another phase of growth that I needed completely outside of what I know. I remember I did Taekwondo for many years, and they'd always say, I'm sure lots of fields say things like this, 80%. You could get 80% of the way, you could fulfill 80% of your potential on sheer talent and skill. That other 20%, you'll never break through if you don't start addressing things like your attitude and your ability to relate and communicate. These are the things that make the difference. Being smart is not enough. It's not. It never was. And even for us with these challenges and the discrimination and the oppression and the additional, hurdles and obstacles that are put before us, it is true for us too. It is
150%. I just wrote down in all caps. I want to show you. You probably can't see. Being smart is not enough. Let me tell you, I just started learning that. And it's been motherhood, like you said, that has forced me to really reckon with the armor that comes from overachievement, from survival, really, right? Because when you're the first to do these things, break through glass ceilings and walls and all these hurdles in front of us as people of color, as women, as if you grew up a certain way, depending on socioeconomic status, in order to survive, building up that armor is essential, right? Like, I don't regret doing it. It's what got me through. And yet on the other side of it, there's so much that becomes problematic as a result of this armor. And I realize in raising my kids now, my initial instinct was like, you got to do the same thing. You got to overachieve. You got to be smart. You got to be the smartest, not just smart, the smartest, right? And get all of that. And at one point I was like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's not true for them. They don't have to survive life.
Right.
We did it, Cecy. I call my inner child baby girl. I go, baby girl, we're safe now, baby girl. And I have to do this. I have to do this often because that armor continues that narrative inside your head that being smart is essential, being perfect, being an achiever, not making mistakes, and unlearning that, I feel has been this new chapter of my life. Now I'm in my 40s and I'm like, everything that led to my survival today, I have to unlearn.
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive.
Yeah. And we might be the first in our family to raise our kids like this, right? Because I don't insist that my son take my path. I don't insist that, he have things figured out. We had no money. I didn't even know how I was going to finish paying for the rest of school, right? Like it was a yearly thing. My son doesn't have to go through that. I had everything figured out. I had a job before I graduated. I had to make sure that I knew where I was going to lay my head the day after, right? My son doesn't have to do that. And I think about the economic freedom and what that means for the choices you make with what you do with the rest of your life, and how that wasn't that wasn't my reality, right? Like my socioeconomic status to some degree determined, I got very narrow, very young and focused on what I was going to do and where I was going to go. Who knows what I loved acting when I was young. I was in a rendition of The Wiz when we were in the 5th grade.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Girl, listen. And
you had talent.
Oh, and I became like famous in the elementary school for playing something, right? Like, and so I loved acting. And then as I got older, I thought, how am I gonna make money in these arts, right? Like,
it doesn't work. Don't work like
do
that.
Something else, right? And so I make sure I tell my son not to chase money, actually, explicitly. Don't chase the money, chase your passion, find what you're good at, and bring those things together. And then you figure out how to make money doing that.
Yes.
And then we spend way too much of our time in our lives working for you to wind up working, doing something that doesn't make your heart smile and doesn't bring you joy.
Oh my gosh, Mekka, we could talk about this for hours. I want to read you something that I just posted. I didn't write it, but that talks about this because funny enough, acting, art, drawing, that was my jam. And before I went away to boarding school, you're from New York. I had gotten into LaGuardia. Which is like the premier art school for drawing.
Yes.
And I got in, I was like, what? Drawing was everything. I was a great student, but man, the only thing that made my heart sing was drawing. But then I got a full scholarship to a prestigious boarding school that I had never heard of, but I had to go in Massachusetts. I got this thing in the mail that said, you're getting a free ride. And I knew only the smart kids, only the high achievers got this. And I literally left art behind that same day. And I would try here and there. I did a course, in high school. Then I did a course in college. And that thing was so hard that I was like, oh, this is not fun anymore. And I just left it behind. And I want to read this to you that I posted. Again, these are not my words. Rich kids being able to do art for a living may be a reflection of their privilege, but it seems to me like a reflection of the fact that a human doesn't have to worry about money will often choose art.
Yep.
Everyone is an artist until rent is due. I wish we all had that right.
Amen. I do too. I do. It's so true. I bet a lot of people have these stories like yours. I have one. I was in the junior high school band. Cool. I played the flute. I played the clarinet. I loved music. I played the piano. My junior high school music teacher. I went to junior high school 109. Shout out to Mr. Steyer. I hope he hears this. We all love him. To this day, we love him. He was the first teacher. I shouldn't say that. He wasn't my 6th grade teacher. I had really good teachers. New York City public school system.
Shout out to
what people say that's some good stuff. Send your kids to New York Actually,
Yes.
don't. New York City is full. Don't do that.
That was very back. But shout out to the teachers holding
Shout
it
out to the
down.
teachers. But my music teacher, I remember I had gotten kicked out of the spring concert for something, and he was telling me to swallow my pride and go apologize. And he's talking, and I'm like, eh. And he said, look at me because I love you. And I was like, oh, you love me? Like this is not just, you don't just like me because I play the flute good. So, but he poured into me. Yeah. And when I graduated, there was an opportunity. There was a music program at Bayside High School, and I got some award for the music. But I also got into Brooklyn Tech, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I got into the schools, and I chose Brooklyn Tech. And so, do I go develop a technical skill that can, it's satisfying my science and math, and I know I can make money? Or do I go pursue playing the flute? And so I said, I can play the flute at Brooklyn Tech, right? They have a band. No.
Not the case. Not the same at all.
Not the same. And your music practice was like half of your lunch in the basement, and lunch was on like the freaking millionth floor, and you couldn't take the elevator. And so same thing. I was like, this is too much. Yeah. I'm just going to let it go. Yeah. And I think if there was freedom and not the worry about what am I going to do? How am I going to make money? Who knows? Who knows? Yeah. I think that post, that blurb, that thing that you just read, that is dead. That's spot on. I think that's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm. And I think we oftentimes think about being the first in the family and hear about it as a pure achievement, right? Mm-hmm. Which in many cases, not always, in many cases it is, right? Something to be proud of. But we don't talk about like the paths we didn't take, right? Mm-hmm. Because we had to be the first. We had to get out. That was always what was ingrained in me, was just get out.
Oh gosh. I had to get out. My high school boyfriend was murdered my senior year. I'm so sorry. We were done. All we were doing was waiting to graduate. Wow. And we were already going to college. Like we had all been accepted. We knew we were going. He was going to Clark. My best friends were going to Spelman and Clark. And so we were leaving. We were all but done. But I didn't have that, I got to get out of here feeling until that happened. And he was murdered, and I had to get out of there. I had to get out of there. And I think maybe it might be part of the reason why I never considered coming back to live in the city. Like not 1 second did I ever consider that I would come live back in New York City. I was like, I definitely got to get out of here.
Of course. And there's so much that your brain gets programmed to believe with a trauma like that. Oh, yes. And I'm guessing there wasn't immediate sort of healing and work and therapy provided for you. I feel like, I know when I was growing up, when things happen, you just kind of got right back up. And that also informs how you carry on in the world.
Yes. This armor, this guarding, this, I think I learned too young how to shut it out and just keep moving and not process it. Yep. And it does shape your response to trauma. And, I think from the outside, it looks like strength and stoicism and under pressure, you're great, but it's on the inside, it's turmoil, and it's not good for you. And so it's again, right. And so much later on in life, I start, hey, Mekka, you're a human being. And guess what? All those feelings you stuff down in there, you can't live like that. Like you have to talk about it, and you have to write it down, do something, let it out, and allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to cry, allow yourself to be hurt. Life is not all about the good experiences. It is all things. And it's part of being a person, and you can't shut it out that way. And so, like even when it hurts now, I think I've done a ton of work to allow it. Allow it, because there's growth in it, there's learning in it. And if you shut that out, you are also missing that experience too.
100%, 100%. I'd love for you to share maybe one or two tips or strategies that you've used in that kind of unlearning process, for anybody who might be listening, who's like, this is just who I am now. Like, I don't know how to break out of my armor.
So I think what helped me a ton was having a life coach. That is different from therapy, but I think everybody needs therapy all the time. Like,
I agree.
I highly recommend it. However you come to find somebody you trust that you can talk to without judgment, have this environment. Depending on your family relationships, you may not want it to be a family member. That can be harder sometimes.
Word.
But talking to my life coach, what I found, which was really effective, and this was a testament to my life coach, she helped me talk myself into my answers, my path. Like through talking, I uncovered so many things about what I wanted and what I probably needed. And so that talking was really helpful. Writing has also been helpful for me. Writing down my thoughts in the moment. I also use voice memo notes when the things come to me. I just record them and I listen to them later. Volunteering, like being very charitable and intentionally giving, sacrificially giving to other people in need, that absolutely has helped me like grow in my compassion and get myself more in touch with my own feelings and helping me further soften, because this thing hardens you and it makes you not care. And there, it even translated into when people would wrong me. Oh, I was so good at, I could sever this relationship. I don't care the nature of it. I'll never talk to you again. And I actually thought that was a good thing. It's a terrible thing. So,
I used to take pride in that. Like, I don't need you. Next day, over it. On to the next one. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's not, look, we all deserve forgiveness, and learning about forgiveness and how it's not about them, it's about you and your capacity to love and understand. And reading, I know people have all their favorites. I love The Four Agreements. It's one of my favorite books. I've read it multiple times now. I've listened to it. I think figure out your philosophy. Learn to love other people. Like, just learn that I think we naturally fall into cynicism because people can be so terrible. But that's because the negative and the awful is more newsworthy, right? We pay more attention to it. There's so much more good going on at any point in time than bad, and focus on that and learn how to love people and seek the kindness in people, and learn how to express it and be kind. It is I wanted to do a whole talk at a technical conference about kindness, because I see too many people, especially in fields of technology, too many people are rewarded for being smart when in truth, they're awful people, and they don't support. They're leaders who don't support other people. They speak to other people horribly. They treat other people badly. And we've somehow convinced ourselves that that is the making of a good leader, right? Like, you see these profiles on CEOs that say that they parallel psychopaths, and that's okay because they're good at business. And I'm like, there's no business that's good without people. And so if you're good at making money, but you're terrible with people, you're not a good leader. And why did we agree? I was radicalized by Mediocre, the book. If you haven't read it, read it.
Okay.
But no, I mean, it's something that I've observed, and we've been trying. There's a lot of women in tech organizations that are trying to bring to highlight the importance of kindness and try to have people actually evaluated on how good they are at communicating and at dealing with other people. And this merging of the humanities and the technology. Why have we been ignoring the humanities for so long? Why aren't we making sure people are good with people and learn how to communicate better?
Yes.
And so I think fostering those, no matter what you wind up doing in your life, fostering your own humanity, your capacity for kindness and love, that's really, it just is the key. Again, you can know everything in the world. If you're terrible to other people and you're hard to get along with and you don't spend any time being introspective, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to have a harder time than you have to. So yeah, that's kind of, I'm so much more mushy than I was, honestly. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
It's such a better way to live life.
It is.
Such wise words. Thank you. Thank you for that. I feel like you just gave everybody the blueprint. That's the blueprint, y'all. You literally, if you do half of that, it is gonna work. It is gonna work.
Yeah.
I know you got to go soon, but I want to make space for celebrating and honoring the amazing achievements that you have made. And I know we could talk a whole nother hour about it, but what are the things that you're proud of for being the first, and what are you able now to experience and do and create as a result of these sacrifices and everything you talked about?
So the more economic freedom is a good thing. I mean, the world's not about money. Everything's not about money. But the fact is, we live under capitalism, and you need it to open up opportunities for the things that you want to do and the things that you want for your family. So that's definitely. But proudest, I think I put this in there that my son is not buried under student loan debt. Right. He's not going to start out in the red. He's not going to have to make decisions based on, trying to climb out of insurmountable debt. I can, if he has further endeavors, I can support him. Right. He's my legacy. So that's the biggest accomplishment. And that's why you do it ultimately, right? Like at first I'm like, I want to do it so I can have money. No, I want to do it so he doesn't have to struggle and go through what I want. So, but then there's also once I realized my blackness, my womanness, was so grossly underrepresented in this field. I completely embraced talking about it and talking in all spaces about it. And the truth is, when you are a Black female in this space, you will be tokenized. You will absolutely be tokenized. And so that is a gift and a curse. And so you can use that to amplify your own messages and take the tokenization back, right? Like sometimes make people think twice about whether or not they want to call on you just for being a Black woman. You go in their spaces and you blow it up and you tell them the truth about themselves in the field and how we can change it. And so the past couple of years, I've done more of that. And so I've been a mentor to young people pursuing STEM. I work with the schools in the community to help foster and build up tech education for underrepresented students from underrepresented communities, bringing computer science and technology education into spaces where there isn't, but also bringing basic math tutoring, basic reading tutoring to these schools so they can see a Black woman helping them with fields that are not associated with Black women. I might be the only Black woman they ever see that's a principal engineer that studied computer science for years, that is really good at science and math and can help them, right? And what happens when you talk to these kids is that they talk to you. It's not just about the science and math, right? They relax in the presence of familiar and comfort. And so growing in that space, I love that work. It's my happy place. I know that's where, when hopefully I don't have to worry about money anymore. Hopefully I can go be there and
Yes,
build that up and spend time there. Yeah.
that's powerful. I love so much of what you're saying, and I wish we could speak for the 3 hours, but I love that it ultimately does come back to full circle, giving back. And I think people take for granted just how transformative that can be on both ends. I think it sounds like a nice thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, community service, like it's so much bigger.
Oh,
It's so much bigger than community service.
yeah. Yeah, it is. And mentorship, right? Like
Yes.
I mentor a lot of young women, a lot of Black and brown women. And
Yes.
they're always so grateful, right? They're always like, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm like, thank you, because this is
Yeah.
a two-way relationship, and
Yep.
being the first and being the one, being the only sometimes, and being one of very few, it is an honor to be able
Yes.
to share. And I want to both learn, but I absolutely want to impart, just as I can help my son avoid the struggles that I've had, I can help warn. I
Yes.
can help
Yes.
share. I can help uh, um, impart some of this wisdom onto these young professionals so that they own their careers and
Yes.
have more agency than I feel like I did when I was younger in my career. And that's so rewarding. It is just so, again, right? It's the people part that you get the most out of. The certificates, the awards, that's great. I'm not knocking it. Don't get me wrong. We appreciate and celebrate those things, but it doesn't feel that there's a different feeling from that connection with people it's unmatched.
100%. I 100% agree with you. I'm so grateful. I feel like I have 45 more questions, but I want to respect and honor your time. And I just want to thank you first for your strength and your courage and your inspiration, and for your learning and then your unlearning, because just as you contribute to others, you contribute to me, right? As a fellow person on this road navigating foreign lands, it is life-giving to hear from other folks, right? And know that, like, I'm not alone. And that when I was struggling, you were struggling too. So even 20 years ago, I wasn't alone, even though I thought I was.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you for what you've done for my life, and that for what you're doing in the world, because I truly, truly believe this is what liberation requires.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for saying that. That is beautiful. I love it. And thank you for this invitation, and for doing what you're doing and having people share these stories. I really hope people get something. This is so rich. I can't wait to listen to all of it.
I know. I'm really excited. So before we close, is there a way that folks can reach you? Maybe there's something they want to ask, or a follow-up question or anything like that. Is there a way that people can contact you?
Yeah. I am on Twitter. I know, but I am on Twitter. It's a good thing. Mekka Codes, MEKKACODES. That's actually my handle on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So you can find me on all three. And yeah, questions are absolutely welcome. Connect, DM me even if you want. That's cool.
Awesome. Yes, if something stayed with you, if something spoke to you, moved you, please connect with Mekka. You can also connect with us at First in the Family on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and share this with other folks who might need to hear it today. Yeah. There's a lot of us on this journey, and we don't realize how many other people are on that journey. So Mekka, thank you. Thank you so much again for sharing your story, for being so vulnerable. It's such an honor to meet you. And we'll have to do this again. I think there's more questions I want to ask. And next time I'm going to carve out like 2.5 hours.
Yes.
Just to make sure we cover all the ground. But thank you. I always want to shout out my producer, Gapi, who is the first in his family to be a producer. And of course, our listeners, thank you for listening. Thank you for just your generosity of spirit. And my hope, like I mentioned to you already, Mekka, is that this will provide just like a safe and supportive space for folks like us to navigate this, to interrogate it, to challenge themselves, and just really talk about the real of what it takes to break a generational chain. So I thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
All righty. Well, take care and good luck with everything. I will stay in touch.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, that was so good. Wow. You know what I love about interviews like that is that I never actually know how they're going to go. And then when they happen, there's just so much connectivity and relating to someone. I think this is one of maybe the first guests where I didn't actually know in a previous life. I've like heard about her through a friend, but I'd never met her, never spoken to her. And what I love about this podcast is that when you have that shared experience, right? Not the exact experience, right? I'm not an engineer. I did not go to schools. I have never been in that space. There's so much that connects us. And I think that's true, honestly, across all humans. That may sound cheesy, but I think as the old adage goes, I might be butchering it, but there's so much more that connects us than separates us. And just by having these kind of conversations, it's just so life-giving. So I could go on and on. I really appreciated this conversation today. And like I mentioned before, if there's something that stayed with you, or there's an unanswered question, or there's something you wish that we covered that we didn't have time to cover, let us know, man. Let us know on social media. I love to hear from people because this is complex. You know, all of these interviews could be 6 hours long, probably more. So there's never going to be a time that we cover it all. So I really want to hear from you and what would be helpful, because that's what this space is all about. All right, friends. As always, my name is Cecy, and this has been First in the Family, and I hope you tune in next week to see who's first. Take care.